Imagine for a second that you are mourning the sudden, really violent death of a close friend. Like your heart rate is elevated.
Yeah.
Your stomach is in absolute knots. You're crying real physical tears. And you're sitting in a room with a group of other people who are also just openly weeping.
Right. That's heavy.
You are all planning a funeral together. But, and here's the massive catch, the person you're grieving never actually existed.
I mean, it sounds totally unhinged on paper, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like if someone walked into that room right then, they would think you'd all completely lost your grip on reality. But in the psychology world, this is a fully documented phenomenon. In collaborative storytelling, it's usually called bleed.
Bleed.
Yeah, bleed. It's this moment when the that artificial barrier between an imaginary character and the real breathing human being playing them just completely dissolves. The emotions literally bleed across the table.
And that phenomenon, that total collapse of the wall between fiction and reality, that is the entire focus of our deep dive today. We're looking at this really remarkable long-form account of a tabletop storytelling session.
Yeah.
The document is titled Session 4, Whispers of Abandoned Innocence. And I want to set a very clear rule for you listening right now. Our mission today has absolutely nothing to do with the mechanics of a game.
Right. None of that.
We are not talking about dice rolls or math or rule books. None of it.
We are tossing all of that scaffolding straight out the window. Because, honestly, the mechanics just do not matter here. What matters is the psychology of the real people sitting around that table.
Exactly. We're looking at this devastating moral choice made by real people in a shared imaginary space. So to set the stage for you, the narrative centers on this group of strangers who get swallowed up by a supernatural mist, right? And they're deposited inside this place called the Durst House.
Which is just terrifying.
It really is. It's this looming, oppressive mansion, and it basically functions like a roach motel for human souls. Like people go in and nobody ever comes out.
It's a strictly one-way trip. But the architecture of the house, like the physical traps, that isn't actually what makes it dangerous.
No.
It's the psychology of the house itself.
Which brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We are going to zero in entirely on the fate of one specific character in this group, a tiefling barbarian named Leona. And we're going to look at the agonizing, just defining decision she makes right at the very end of her life.
It's a huge moment.
But, well, I feel like I'm getting ahead of myself here. To understand why Leona's final choice actually matters, you have to understand the environment that forced it. Like, how does this house actually operate? Because it doesn't just, crush people with falling chandeliers.
No, it is so much more insidious than that. If you read the source material closely, you realize pretty quickly that death is almost secondary to the house's main goal. The house kills by hollowing people out. It targets your identity, your dignity, your autonomy, and it just strips them away piece by piece until you're nothing more than a husk.
Okay, so make that make sense for me. What does hollowing out actually look like in the context of this story?
Well, let's look at the victims the group discovers inside. Take Clara, the household's nursemaid. The group doesn't just find her dead in a random hallway.
No, they don't.
They find her folded into a wooden storage trunk. Her mouth has been literally sewn shut.
Ugh.
Her hands are bound in barbed wire. And her legs were systematically broken just so she could be compressed into this tiny, tiny box.
And the detail that genuinely just turned my stomach in the account, there were scratch marks on the inside of the lid, meaning she was still alive when they closed it.
Precisely. The house turned a living human being into an object to be stored. And you see that exact same pattern of erasure with the children of the house, Rose, and her younger brother, Thorn.
Right, the kids.
They weren't murdered outright. They were locked in a top-floor attic by their own mother.
Just completely, totally abandoned. The account notes they were starved to the point where they were eating the varnish off their own wooden bedposts.
Awful.
Until finally, the older sister, Rose, she tells her little brother that they should just lie down on the floor and go to sleep. And she promises him that someone is going to come and help them. But nobody ever comes. The house just slowly, passively starves the life right out of them.
It's a highly orchestrated stripping of their humanity. Which brings into focus another character who entered the house long before Leona's group ever did, a man named Corso.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up Corso, because when I was reading through the notes, Corso's fate really got under my skin. Corso was a bard, right? Like a storyteller who had made it his life's work to collect the stories of the dead.
Yeah, his entire identity was built around being the witness. He was the sole survivor of every single group he had ever traveled with. He deeply believed that no matter how tragic a life was, it deserved to have its ending recorded and remembered.
But look at what this house does to him. It doesn't give him a final, glorious stand. It doesn't give him an audience.
Not at all.
When the current group finally finds what's left of Corso in this dusty nursery, they don't even find a body.
No.
They find a folded cloak on the floor, and then one of the characters steps on something hard. It's an ink-stained, severed finger, wrapped in a handkerchief with tiny little bite marks on it.
That's it.
That is it. That is all that remains of a man who dedicated his entire life to documenting other people's endings. He died entirely off-screen.
It is the ultimate cruelty for a storyteller. The house denied him the very thing he gave to everyone else. He got no story of his own. He was just completely erased.
For you listening, it's like, imagine a world-renowned archivist who spends 80 years preserving the history of a whole civilization, and then they die in a freak fire inside their own library, completely alone, and not a single person ever even knows they were there.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's this incredibly bitter irony, but I assume the source document emphasizes Corso's meaningless death for a reason, right?
It does. It serves as a direct narrative foil to what is about to happen to Leona.
Okay.
Corso's unstoried, unwitnessed death in the dark is the exact opposite of what Leona is going to experience. Her death is going to be witnessed by everyone, and most importantly, it is going to be chosen.
Okay, let's talk about Leona. How do we even describe her without getting bogged down in fantasy jargon?
Right, keep it simple.
She is a barbarian, first and foremost. A proud, hot-tempered tiefling, but her entire identity is rooted in her physical dominance. She protects people, and she carries this massive, incredibly heavy greatsword that was given to her by her mentor. That sword is the literal symbol of her strength.
Right, and if you take away her ability to wield that sword, you are taking away the core of who she is. And it's also really vital to note that she isn't alone. She travels with her closest friend, a woman named Fiat.
Yeah.
The players themselves establish that these two characters have a deep, years-long bond. Best friends.
So, Leona, Fiat, and the rest of the group are trying to escape this house, but they've made this choice that they cannot leave the ghosts of those starved children behind. They want to carry them out and lay them to rest.
Yeah, to save them, basically.
But to do that, they have to physically carry the children's spiritual remains out of the house.
And the younger child, Thorn, asks to be carried inside the spirit of another party member, and the older sister, Rose, the one who promised her brother that help would come, she asks Leona to carry her.
Leona kneels down, she offers her arm, and the ghost of this starved little girl literally sinks into her physical body. Leona is sheltering a dead child inside her own form, and with that burden, the group descends into the crypts beneath the house to find a way out. And well, this is where they get ambushed.
Right, they are attacked by shadows that detach themselves from the crypt walls. But I want to be very precise about what these entities actually do, because it explains Leona's psychological breakdown here.
Yeah, go ahead.
These shadows do not inflict normal physical wounds. They don't make you bleed.
Wait, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. How do they hurt you if they aren't physically cutting you?
They attack your vitality.
Yeah.
Every single time one of these shadows touches you, they drain your actual physiological strength. They cause your muscles to just instantly atrophy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so Leona, being the proud protector, naturally throws herself right to the front of the line to block these things from getting to her friends.
Of course she does.
But because she is the shield, she is taking every single hit. The shadows just keep connecting. And you can feel the rising panic in the account from the real people sitting around the table. Because Leona's strength is draining so rapidly that her defining weapon, her master's greatsword, suddenly becomes too heavy for her to lift.
Think about the psychological terror of that.
Yeah.
The house is utilizing its primary weapon, hollowing her out.
Yeah.
It is actively stripping away her identity, her pride, her physical capability. She is experiencing the exact same erasure that Clara and the children faced, just in a different violent form.
She is losing the ability to be Leona. She can't even hold her sword up, but she refuses to retreat. She just keeps trying to swing this massive piece of steel, and her last real coherent action in the fight is shouting this incredibly defiant line at the shadows, "Do not underestimate me." Which is just gut-wrenching because as you read it, you know she has absolutely nothing left in the tank.
And this brings us to the absolute breaking point of the story. The moment that just stops the entire session in its tracks. Leona's strength is almost entirely gone. She is moments away from dying. But she is suddenly offered a loophole.
Right, by the ghost of the little girl she is carrying. Rose realizes Leon is about to die, and the ghost offers to burn up what is left of her own spiritual essence to heal Leona. A ghost can essentially cannibalize itself to pull a living person back from the brink of death.
And the players at the table, like the real people sitting around with their snacks and their character sheets, they immediately start pressuring Leona's player to take the deal.
Yeah, they're panicking.
Another player, who was controlling a character named Arlek, actually voices the grim reality of the situation out loud. He says, "Just use the girl. I mean, it's a ghost. It's not a girl. She was dead already."
Now, I know half the people listening right now are probably nodding their heads, agreeing that it's just a game and she needs to survive. And I know you and I look at this moment from entirely different universes.
We really do. Because if we are stepping back and analyzing this from a purely pragmatic, survival-oriented standpoint, Leona absolutely had an obligation to take that deal.
I'm honestly baffled that you can defend that. But go ahead, make your case. Why on earth should she have sacrificed an abused child?
Because Arlek, the other player, is entirely correct. It is a harsh truth, but it is the undeniable truth. Rose was already dead. Leona, on the other hand, was a living, breathing person. And more importantly, she was the primary physical protector of that group. If Leona falls, the shadows are going to step right over her body and slaughter everyone else, including her best friend, Fiad. By refusing the sacrifice, Leona is essentially trading a vital living party member for a memory.
But look at the cost of that choice.
The cost of survival in a hostile environment. Rose volunteered. She wasn't coerced. She offered herself freely to save the person who was trying to help her. By rejecting that offer, Leona commits a massive tactical failure. She prioritizes her own moral comfort over the literal lives of her friends who were relying on her to get them out of that basement.
I hear your logic, I really do, but I completely reject the fundamental premise of it. Think about the language Arlek uses. It's a ghost. It's not a girl. Do you realize that is the exact perspective of the Durst house?
What?
That is the language of abusers. The house looks at Clara and sees a piece of meat to be folded into a box. It looks at the children and sees annoyances to be locked away and starved.
But the ghost is offering to be used. It's her choice.
She is an abused, starved child who has been trapped for decades. The fact that she volunteers doesn't absolve Leona of the moral responsibility of accepting it. That little girl just dragged herself out of a locked attic to help these strangers. If Leona turns around and spends her spirit like a disposable battery just to save her own skin, she is crossing a moral event horizon.
But if she dies, they all might die.
Maybe. But if you compromise your very soul, your basic humanity, just to survive a haunted house, then what exactly is left of you to save? By refusing to use the child, Leona is holding a vital moral line. She is resizing to let the group become the very monster they are trying to escape.
See, this is what makes collaborative storytelling so endlessly fascinating. It raises an impossible question for you, the listener, to chew on. Is it more righteous to die with your principles perfectly intact, leaving your friends to face the consequences alone? Or is it more responsible to carry the agonizing guilt of a sacrifice so that others might live?
There's no neat answer. I know we aren't going to resolve this debate between us, and I actually want the listener to sit with that discomfort. Because regardless of what Leona should have done, we have the record of what she actually did. And this is where the narrative shifts from a debate into just a masterclass in cinematic emotion.
Yeah. But let's slow down and look at the reality of the table in this moment.
Please.
The pressure is on. Everyone is staring at Leona's player. And Leona refuses the sacrifice. She looks at the group and says, "No, I'm not going to kill some innocent that saved my life."
This sequence in the source document is breathtaking. Leona takes her final action in the fight. She knows she only has seconds left, and she doesn't use that time to attack the shadows. She doesn't lash out in anger.
Right, she accepts it.
She accepts that she is finished. So she reaches out her arm, trying to hand the spirit of the little girl over to someone who can carry her the rest of the way. She looks directly at her oldest friend, Fiad.
The physical dynamics of the real people at the table become incredibly important right here.
Yeah.
You aren't just looking at characters anymore. You're looking at friends, watching friends make irreversible choices.
Yes. The player controlling Fiad describes her own actual face in that moment. She is looking across the table at Leona's player, utterly desperate, projecting the silent plea of, "You cannot do this to me."
She knows.
She knows exactly what Leona is doing. She is securing the child, and she is accepting her own death.
And then Leona's player adds the final piece of description to the scene. It is just 5 words. You see a single tear.
You see a single tear, And the great sword finally drops. It just clatters to the stone floor because her muscles can no longer grip the handle. Her face goes completely gaunt. Her body atrophies. She falls, and the shadows just swarm over her, desperately hunting for the ghost of the little girl.
But Rose is already gone. The handoff was successful. The ghost is safely inside Fiat.
And Leona is gone. And it's vital to understand that this isn't a temporary video game knockout where someone can just, throw a healing potion on her.
No respawns here.
Her strength hit absolute zero. She was entirely consumed. And in the silence that follows, from inside Fiat, the ghost of the little girl whispers to the surviving group, "I felt what it was to die again."
What is so profound about this sequence is the thematic symmetry. We spent all that time discussing how the house operates. It drains you, it starves you, it hollows you out. Leona died of the house's signature method. She was drained to a literal husk.
Yeah.
But if you contrast her ending with Corso's ending, the bard who died completely alone in the dark, you see the victory in it.
Because Leona authored her own ending.
Precisely. Her death wasn't an accident. It was intentionally chosen. It was witnessed by the people she loved, and it was an act of pure, unadulterated narrative defiance. She may have lost her physical life, but she survived morally. She beat the house at its own psychological game by refusing to adopt its methods.
It genuinely gives me a heavy feeling in my chest just walking through it. But while Leona, the character, is gone, the emotional reality for the human being sitting around that table, that has really just begun.
Oh, absolutely. The aftermath of the battle is where you see that bleed effect we talked about at the beginning. You take full control of the room.
Fiadian, and both the character in the story and the player at the table, is devastated. She drops to her knees weeping and then flies into this blind rage. She spends the rest of the encounter just frantically trying to destroy anything in her path to channel that grief.
Just lashing out at everything.
Yeah. Eventually, another member of the group just takes a massive hammer and completely obliterates the statue that's generating the shadows, and the fight abruptly ends.
The adrenaline wears off. And then comes the agonizing moment where they have to pick up the pieces of what is left.
I really want to slow down on this specific detail from the source because it is terrifyingly intimate. Fiat goes over to the corner of the crypt to pick up Leona's body. And when she lifts her oldest friend, the very first thing she notices is that the body is entirely too light.
Because it's a hollowed husk. The substance of the person has been entirely taken.
There is virtually nothing left of her physical mass. And of course, the group flat out refuses to leave her behind in that terrible place. They will not let her become another forgotten victim of the Durst House. So they begin the long, slow, agonizing walk out of the crypts.
The walkout.
And I want you to visualize the sheer psychological weight of the things they are carrying as they walk out into the mist.
Think about what's in their arms. Between the surviving members, they are carrying a folded cloak and an ink-stained severed finger wrapped in a handkerchief, the entirely erased legacy of Corso. They are carrying the physical skeletons of 2 starved children. They're carrying the ghostly spirits of those same 2 children inside their own bodies. And they are carrying the hollowed-out, completely weightless body of their protector.
It is a literal procession of grief, and eventually the storytelling session comes to a close. The tension in the room breaks. The players do what humans always do when we are really uncomfortable. They start making grim jokes to deflect the pain.
Yeah, you gotta break the tension somehow.
Right. Leona's player makes a crack about not wanting his character's hollow body packed in the same bag as Corso's severed finger. Everyone laughs. The books are closed. The players log off for the night.
But the human nervous system doesn't have an off switch for grief just because the rulebooks get put away.
No, it doesn't. Because in the quiet, long after the game is technically over, Fiat's player reaches out to Leona's player, and she says the thing she couldn't bring herself to say in character during the heat of the moment. She just says, "I'm sorry, I couldn't say it to you."
I want the listener to really internalize that quote. That isn't a fictional rogue talking to a fictional barbarian. That is a real human being expressing genuine, complicated sorrow to their real friend for a loss that, while entirely imagined, felt physically and emotionally real.
And that right there is the incredible magic and the sheer terror of this kind of collaborative storytelling. The grief at that table wasn't a simulation. They weren't just pushing plastic miniatures around a grid and doing math.
No, not at all.
They had extended their actual empathy, pieces of their own identities, into these avatars. And when one of them was hollowed out and destroyed, they all felt the void in the room.
It completely disproves the idea that these spaces are just for escaping reality.
Yeah.
They're crucibles. We use these stories to safely test our own morality. We willingly put ourselves into impossible traumatic situations just to see where our own lines are drawn when the pressure becomes unbearable.
Yes. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you spend your day caring about a story some strangers told around a table? Because it is a testament to the profound, terrifying power of shared human imagination. Which leaves me with a final thought I really want you to chew on today.
Let's hear it.
If a story is purely imaginary, if the bricks of the Durst house are just made of words and the shadows are just abstract ideas, why does the grief we feel for these characters weigh so incredibly heavy in our real everyday lives? Could it be that the choices we make in fiction, when the stakes are entirely made up, there are no real-world consequences, and no one but our closest friends are watching, are actually the truest, most unfiltered expressions of who we really are? When that impenetrable wall between the imaginary world and the real world finally collapses, maybe we aren't seeing a game at all. Maybe for the first time we're just seeing ourselves.